My desire for organic discussion was somewhat taken advantage of, so we'll make sure we don't have that problem going forward. I'll address you when it's your time to speak. I'll recognize you, and no testifiers will be calling on on committee members to discuss. I'll handle that part. All right, first thing up, however, we're going to start out on some workings, because I'm sure the crowd is all here for Senate Bill 55. So we're going to start off with taking care of some final action on bills previously heard. And Eileen, if you could get us up to speed and remind us on what SB 55 entailed, that would be fantastic. I know, I caught you off guard, my bad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, committee. Senate Bill 55, as amended by the Senate committee, would prohibit the assignment of benefits under property and casualty insurance and would define such an assignment of benefits as an unfair or deceptive act or practice.
All right, most of you will probably remember this one as refers Bill 2, the assignment of benefits. I would entertain a motion. Yes, ranking neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the purposes of discussion, I would move that we pass out Senate Bill 55 favorably for passage.
All right, second by Representative Chauncey. Discussion on Senate Bill 55 because it was a hot topic. And the folks are here to discuss. Seeing none, ranking neighbor, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In order for this meeting to flow quickly, I move my amendment to pass out Senate Bill 55 favorably for passage.
All right, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Very good. It is passed out favorably. The ayes do indeed have it. All right, SB 422. Eileen, want to remind us of that one, even though it was only yesterday or Monday?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 422 is the bill that would reorganize certain provisions relating to foreign insurance companies that are seeking to do business in Kansas. It authorizes the Department of Insurance to revoke the licensure of a non-resident agent without notice and opportunity for a hearing, and requires agents and public adjusters to respond to inquiries from the commissioner within 14 calendar days.
All right, ranking neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This does clean up some language, and the Department of Insurance has not really been before us much this year. So, you know, I would move that we pass Senate Bill 422 out favorably for passage.
I'm not sure we want to encourage them, but I appreciate it.
These are not shell bills, which I'm thankful for.
No, we have no mirrors this year. All right. Second from Representative Chauncey. Discussion on SB 422, the Gypsy Agent Bill. Oh, my apologies to all Romani in the audience. No discussion. All right, ranking neighbor, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I close.
All right. You've heard the motion. All those in favor of passage of SB 422, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Very good. SB 422 is passed out. All right. For all of you who were interested in 422 and 55, you may now leave. I think Marley might be the only one. Oh, okay. All right. Let's get to the thing that I think drew the crowd today. Let's go to SB 360 and I'll open the hearing. And Eileen, could you get us up to speed on the contents of SB 360?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. What is this? Third time's the charm, so hopefully this will go smooth as silk. For those of you who had issues with my Technicolor charts. I now give you a white chart with Technicolor ink. So still hoping to provide the committee with some entertainment there. The Senate Bill 360, as amended by the Senate Committee of the Whole, would create and enact the Kansas Consumer Prescription Protection and Accountability Act. This act would consist of 6 new sections of law and would incorporate the provisions of the Pharmacy Benefits Manager Licensing Act, which is KSA 40-3821 et seq., and would update and redesignate those statutes as part of the new act. The resulting new act would require licensure of pharmacy benefits managers, registration of auditing entities, and applies to any pharmacy benefit manager that provides claim processing service, prescription drug or device services to covered individuals who are Kansas residents, as well as to any audit of the records of any pharmacy conducted by a managed care company, third-party payer entity that represents a covered entity, or health benefit plan. The bill passed the Senate Committee of the Whole on a vote of 32-8 on February 18th. The Senate Committee on Financial Institutions and Insurance amended the bill in committee to change how PBMs treat rebates and to exempt self-funded ERISA plans from Section 5 of the bill. Just as a note, you'll see those amendments appear on the chart. So where the red strike-through text appears, those are deletions that the committee made. And where you see the blue underline, those are additions to the bill that the committee made. The Senate Committee of the Whole amended the bill to, 1, remove a reporting requirement for health benefit plans or covered entities to annually disclose the extent to which credits, rebates, discounts, and other payments were passed on to reduce insurance premiums and fees. 2, to remove a requirement for the commissioner to consider the information in certain reports when reviewing premium rates charged for individual or group accident and health policies. And 3, to provide that the use of annual reporting by health benefit plans and covered entities would be limited to verification of data for compliance purposes. And lastly, number 4, it would prohibit protected health information from being included in any report provided to the governor. If you take a look at the attached grid very briefly, it describes the provisions of each new section broken into columns categorizing the shalls, the mays, and the shall nots pertaining to each entity in the section. You can see kind of the section numbers bordered in black, kind of delineating everything. And then on the very last page of the chart, you'll see the amendatory sections with a brief sentence telling you what the statute does in the act. And with that, Mr. Chair, I can stand for questions.
All right, committee, do we have any questions for the reviser regarding SB 360? You described it. You have a question? Okay, I see no questions. You described it so succinctly that there are no questions whatsoever.
Third time.
This time, you got it nailed. All right. Committee, we have a number of proponents and opponents today, I think 12 in total. I want to leave time for questions at the end, so I'm going to limit each person. This isn't a significant limit. I hope that 5 minutes isn't a ridiculous short time. If it was going to be longer than that, it should have been shorter to begin with. But I'm going to limit the proponents and opponents to 5 minutes each, and my vice will be keeping track, and by golly, we're going to stick to it. But we'll take questions at the end of proponent testimony. We'll take questions at the end of opponent testimony. And let's get started. First and foremost, we have our Insurance Commissioner, Vicki Schmidt, as a proponent for SB 360. Welcome to committee, Vicki. First time this year.
I know. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I have a pleasure of being here today on Senate Bill 360. I come before you today not only as a Commissioner of Insurance, but as a pharmacist with firsthand knowledge of PBMs. Not just because I've worked in pharmacies, but because I feel like I was around when PBMs were invented. So that was supposed to be a laugh. Okay. And you're supposed to say, oh, no, surely not. Okay. PBMs revolutionized the practice of pharmacy back in the work of the pharmacy back in the 1980s. They started out as switchers that served as middlemen that took your prescription. You had real-time verification that if you had insurance and the copays, et cetera, it sent it back to you. And that took about 3 to 5 seconds, which now would be an eternity. But now they have evolved significantly since that time period. Today, the department has very limited authority to regulate PBMs and even fewer tools to assist Kansans who have complaints regarding PBMs. Consequently, there is little transparency and almost no accountability in areas that directly affect prescription prices. This bill attempts to lower drug costs and premiums for Kansans by ensuring that rebates are passed on to the consumers and the health plans, not absorbed by the PBMs. This bill will ban spread pricing, which lowers the amount health plans pay for a drug. This bill will protect consumer choice and access by leveling the playing field and ensuring that all pharmacies are reimbursed the same. This bill provides Kansans transparency and accountability by giving the department the necessary tools to regulate the PBMs. These are not new reforms. They have been upheld by courts around the country, including the U.S. Supreme Court. Opponents of this bill will say the reforms will cause rates to increase, and real data shows that that just is not the case. PBMs play a powerful role in determining what patients pay for prescription drugs. Yet in Kansas, their practices are near unregulated and cost taxpayers and health plans more. I'll make certain that my staff is here to answer any questions, but I want to sincerely and urgently request your consideration of this legislation to lower costs for Kansans. And Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I would like to yield the rest of a little bit more time to Steve Carr so he could talk about the technical amendment that the Senate put on. And that would be his only testimony.
I have no problems with you yielding the remaining 2 minutes and 30 seconds. That would be absolutely fine.
I was really quick.
You were quick. Welcome to committee, Stephen.
Yes, thank you. General Counsel Steve Carr for the Department of Insurance. Thank you, Chairman and fellow members. The amendment that we're asking for when the bill is worked would be as it relates to Section 8. There is a word there. It used to be free. It was amended to unrestricted, and we had heard some concerns about that word, so we would ask that it simply be changed back to no cost. So it's basically meaning any records that would be provided to the department would be at no cost. All right. Anything?
All right, thank you very much, Steve. All right, he certainly beat the 2 minute and 30 second limit. All right, in order to, I have no hopes of the same with our next proponent, Senator. You know, when he was a House member, I could have said he would have beat the 5 minutes, but now, I don't know. Stephen Owens, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm starting my timer just so we're clear because I'm going to beat it. No, thank you guys very much for the opportunity to be here. As a matter of fact, this is the first bill that I've testified on this year and likely will be the only one. So why are we here? We know that PBMs began in the late 60s and 70s when prescription drug coverage started appearing in health plans, employer health plans. So originally, their role was simple: process prescription drug claims, create pharmacy networks, and manage formularies. Yet today, PBMs negotiate rebates from pharmaceutical manufacturers, manage drug formularies, run mail order pharmacies, negotiate reimbursement rates for retail pharmacies, and manage prior authorizations and utilization controls. The problem: PBMs control manufacturer rebates, utilize spread pricing, force independent pharmacies to sell drugs at a loss, and have created monopolies and so much more. So as you've heard this bill, you've likely heard some of the same concern that I originally had heard, that this is anti-free market, that we're creating this dispensing fee. But let me dispel some of those myths for you. First, the dispensing fee already exists. It's paid out through Medicaid. Every prescription that's filled through Medicaid pays an dispensing fee. We authorize that. So there's already a precedent for that in our statute. And this idea of a free market and a free market debate, I'd like to think I'm about as free market as anybody is. However, the free market doesn't exist when a monopoly controls the market. This effectively is what has happened. They're choking out our independent pharmacies through the vertical integration and preferential treatment that they have. Even our own President Trump acknowledges this with his executive orders that have placed price controls on pharmacies. So to say that this is anti-free market, I would argue absolutely the opposite. When I was on the Senate floor and we were debating this, I asked the question, why do PBMs even exist? No, seriously, follow me for just a second here. PBMs are the middleman between insurance and pharmacies, right? That's what they do. So why don't we have hospital benefit managers? Why don't we have doctor's office benefit managers, or heck, even dentist benefit managers? Somehow or another, they have found a way to wiggle themselves in and take the benefit away from our pharmacies. While they do exist, and I'm certainly not standing here saying that they shouldn't exist, although I think a good case can be made there, I personally think that we have a choice. We can support this bill or continue to lose one of the primary healthcare providers in our community. I can assure you that CVS and Walgreens don't hold a candle to the Heston Pharmacy or the Abilene Pharmacy or so many others that provide true compassionate care for our communities. That's why we have to act. That's why we have to see exactly what has gone on here, and we have got to be the ones to stand tall in government. Because if we do not act as government when we have a monopolistic set of rules, then it's the people that truly suffer. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to testify. I have 1 minute and 30 seconds left and have to get back to the Senate floor. But I'd be happy to stand for questions if anybody has any when you're ready.
All right, thank you very much, and I'm pretty sure you'll eat up that 1 minute and 30 seconds on the Senate floor.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you all very much. It's great to see a lot of good friends in the room. Thank you.
All right, next up, we have Alex Burns from Hy-Vee with Brian West on deck and Taggart Wall in the hall.
Good afternoon, Chairman Sutton, Vice Chairman Bergkamp, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today in support of Senate Bill 360. My name is Alex Burns, and I'm the Government Relations Director for Hy-Vee. Here in Kansas, Hy-Vee, which is employee-owned, operates 11 grocery stores with pharmacies. While we do operate at scale, what we're talking about today is not abstract. It's not theoretical. We see it every day at our pharmacy counters. PBM reform is critical to Hy-Vee because it is crucial for our patients. No matter the community that we're in or which community we serve, we see the same patterns repeated time and time again. Patients are frustrated by out-of-pocket costs. They walk away from prescriptions that they can no longer afford, and they are shocked to learn that their pharmacy was paid less for medication than it costs to acquire. And that is not rare. It's not something pharmacies can control, and it's not how a functioning free market works. When PBMs reimburse pharmacies below the acquisition cost or take money back after a prescription has already been dispensed, it doesn't just affect a balance sheet. It affects the patient standing behind that counter. Because when pharmacies are squeezed, staffing gets thinner, services are limited, and pharmacies begin to disappear. And when they do, they don't come back. Patients also wait longer. They make extra trips. They're told medications are no longer available, or that their pharmacy is no longer in network, all while patients are continuing to pay more and more. Behind the scenes, for that very same prescription, PBMs often pay pharmacies one amount, bill employers far more, and then they're pocketing that difference. For patients struggling with addiction, that difference can be devastating. For the medication buprenorphine Naloxone, pharmacies were paid nearly $19 below the cost of the drug, while the plan was billed more than $100 above that same cost. That doesn't improve care. but does not lower costs. And it doesn't help the patient who needs that medication today. Patients may never see the corporate structures behind PBMs, but they feel the consequences in real time at the counter. In fact, in 2025, the Federal Trade Commission found that PBMs marked up some generic drugs by more than 1,000%, all while steering patients to their own affiliated pharmacies and extracting billions of dollars in revenue as employers, patients, and pharmacies bore that cost. Our pharmacists, which arguably in the state of Kansas, we have some incredible pharmacists here, but our pharmacists at Hy-Vee go far beyond what's required to care for their patients. When a patient can't get to the pharmacy, our teams regularly go out of our way to deliver medications directly to their homes. We do this because patients can't wait days when their medication is essential. Our pharmacists also step in when systems don't work, coordinating between the healthcare providers and the insurers when those conversations break down. They also take time to counsel patients when they can stay on top of their medications and out of the hospital. So I asked our pharmacists about this, about the regular care that they provide for patients. When I asked them about why they go above and beyond, they simply said, "This is just what we do. It's second nature to us." And that's something that mail order pharmacy is simply not doing for Kansans. That is why we support PBM reform that prioritizes transparency, fair reimbursement, and accountability. These reforms are not about favoritism, they are not about chains versus independents, and they are about fairness, they are about restoring balance, and ensuring that the system works for all patients, no matter where you live or where you fill your prescription. This legislation is a critical step towards protecting patients' access to the care that they depend on. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Alex. All right, next up, we have Brian West with Bowen Pharmacy.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me?
Sorry, welcome to committee.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Brian West. I am a United States Marine, and I've been a business owner for 23 years in Parsons and recently in Girard. When I started my college career, I quickly learned how much my academic ability had declined. I sat before the counselor, and she said, "You will have to start in a zero-level basic math course if you want to start." Day one, the professor walks in, and he turns to the board, and he writes 3 + 2 up on the board. Turned around, he said, "If you can't answer this, I cannot help you." That proved to be a very important lesson for me that day. As sooner than later, I realized that the math had to work, the numbers always have to line up. 8 years later, I graduated from the University of Oklahoma College of Pharmacy with my Doctor of Pharmacy degree, and I received the Dean's Award for Outstanding Leadership and Contribution to the College of Pharmacy. Community pharmacies are small businesses, and they are deeply rooted in the towns that they serve. We support local banks. We support schools, community colleges, the Chamber of Commerce, organizations, and we provide healthcare access close to home. But over time, I realized that the math started to change. No longer did the formula match 3 + 2. Approximately 10 years ago, it became -3 + 2. And there's always a remainder of 1 now. And because of contractual obligations with the payers, we have no mechanism that we can recoup that loss. It is a loss forever. In my pharmacy today, many prescriptions are reimbursed below the cost of dispensing them, and a significant number of those fall under my net acquisition cost. And this is not because of market fluctuation temporarily. This is long-term. It's static. It reflects a structural misalignment between the cost of acquiring and dispensing medications and the reimbursement structure used to pay for those services. The cost of a prescription has 2 components. We have the cost of the medication as well as the professional services that we provide in order to dispense that medication safely and accurately. If I call a plumber today, I'm going to pay that plumber for the parts and the labor to install that part. If I call an electrician, I'm going to pay for the wiring and the conduit and for the professional services for that electrician to install that wiring safely. And that's what this boils down to, is the safety. Pharmacy operates in a similar way. Every prescription that I fill, I verify, I review, and I go over. I have to train my staff to high standards at all times. Safety checks, regulatory compliance, insurance processing, and always, most importantly, patient counseling. The $10.50 dispensing amount includes in this bill reflects the operational cost of the professional services that I just described. The work that happens behind every single prescription all day long. It ensures medications are dispensed safely and accurately. The fee is not guaranteed profit, nor is it an enrichment to the pharmacy. Within the prescription transaction, the PBM receives compensation for administering the benefit, while the pharmacy incurs the operational costs of safety and dispensing the medication. In most cases, the reimbursement does not reflect the professional cost of dispensing that medication. This bill simply acknowledges the service that is already being performed. These services are not new. It's not anything that we have created or changing. It's something that we've been doing every day for centuries. The bill does not expand pharmacy services or introduce new dispensing work. This is a discussion around the dispensing cost and is simply about recognizing these professional services that we provide every single day. We have a system in place that is designed to protect patient access and safety. This system includes the legislatures, the Kansas Pharmacy Act, the Board of Pharmacy, pharmacists, insurers, PBMs, and the patients that we serve. And these systems always work best when those parts remain in balance and they're aligned. This bill brings balance and alignment. It brings two entities together, the PBMs and the pharmacies, and allows them to work in a way that provides great medical care for our Kansans. Healthcare systems, like any system.
We have reached 5 minutes on
Right.
that, so I appreciate
Thank you for your time.
testimony. Thank you. And stay tuned. There may very well be questions here at the end of the proponent testimony. All right, next up, I have Taggart Wall from the City of Winfield. Welcome to committee.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for letting me speak today. I'll tell a little story. I'm going to stay under the 5 minutes. I don't know a lot about, I'm not a PBM expert. I'm not a health insurance expert. I've done it for a while now, managing cities here in Kansas, small communities. But what I do know is about a little thing that is pretty popular these days up here, as I am well aware, which is called property tax. And I'm going to tell a story about how we were able to make some changes with our PBM here at the City of Winfield and how that saved us money, and how we've lowered mill levy year after year after year, at least the years I've been in Winfield. So cities like Winfield, we provide health insurance for police officers, firefighters, utility workers, all of our other public employees. We're a small rural community. A place like Sterling would call us a big community, but in comparison to Wichita, we're a small rural community. We're like Augusta. We're a major employer in our area. We take the way we treat our taxpayers seriously. Healthcare costs is directly, it's a big part of our budget. Prescription drugs are one of the fastest growing costs of that budget, of that health plan. PBMs play a significant role in determining those costs. They sit in the middle. People have talked about that. We pay our bill, the cities pay the bill, the pharmacy dispenses the medication, the PBMs, right now, seem to control the pricing. Today, I think it's been spoke about, there's 3 PBMs across the country that control 80% of the drug claims. So, City of Winfield, we experience firsthand what happens when transparency is not available. So before July 2023, our employer health plan was administered by one of the largest private insurers. And during the 22-23 plan years, we paid over $700,000 in prescription drug costs. We didn't get any rebates back. If somebody were to claim that we did, that's fine. They wouldn't show us. We asked for it. They wouldn't show us any of that data. They weren't transparent with us. We asked for specific data to tell us that. They wouldn't give it to us. So in July of 2023, we made a change. We moved to a transparent pass-through PBM model, changed our entire health insurance, including the PBM. Our prescription drug spending dropped from over $700,000 to $529,000. Today, we receive nearly $100,000 in rebates because we're part of a transparent PBM. Our copays didn't increase, and our local pharmacies, we're told, are paid better reimbursement rates. Our experience shows something, that the transparency works. What I'm really concerned about, going back to my opening statement, is since 2015, more than 105 pharmacies in Kansas have closed. That little pharmacy that I go to on my main street employs friends and family that make a difference in my community. Without Graves Drug, I don't know, I don't want to be another statistic. I don't want Winfield or Cali County to be one of those statistics. Senate Bill 360 helps bring transparency and fairness to a system that many employers can't see. They're not big enough. They don't have a big enough budget like the city of Winfield that allows us to put some money aside to make a change. They're trapped in this bundled mess. For those reasons, we simply want the same transparency in prescription drug pricing that we expect our local governments to pursue in all of our purchasing. We want transparency. So I respectfully urge the committee to support Senate Bill 360. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much. And yes, you did stay underneath the 5 minutes. All right, next up I have Sandy Keeker. All right, yeah, it's the second vowel you pronounce. I'm picking up on this. Welcome to committee, Sandy.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chairman Sutton and members of the committee. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Sandy Keeker, and I was impressed that you could say that. I am a pharmacist and an independent pharmacy owner of 2 pharmacies. I also currently serve as the president of the Kansas Pharmacists Association, and I'm here today to represent pharmacists from across the state, both the chain and independent pharmacists, to request your support for Senate Bill 360. I'm going to do a quick rundown of where we sit today, and I know you've heard this before, so bear with me. Right now, 80% of our prescription claims are controlled by 3 PBMs, and across all markets, it's the same 3 PBMs. So in our federal market, we have our Medicare Part D and TRICARE. In our state markets, we have our Kansas Medicaid and most of our commercial plans. These 3 PBMs are vertically integrated. Many of them are owned by health plans. And then the PBMs themselves also own their own mail order and retail pharmacies. So with that level of influence in the system, transparency and appropriate oversight are necessary to ensure fair market practices. So what does this system look like from the view of a pharmacist? Every day we fill prescriptions that are reimbursed below the cost of the drug itself, not counting the cost to dispense them. And so why do we fill those prescriptions? Well, because these prescriptions belong to real people in our communities. Last year, my husband and I made the difficult decision to close one of our pharmacy locations. On average, we were being reimbursed just $8.28 above the cost of the medication itself. That equates to a $2.22 loss, at least, per prescription. Over the course of a year, that gap accumulated to about a $67,000 loss. And because there's no magic bag of money for a small business owner, that means that my husband and I were using our life savings to ensure that our patients receive their medications. And as much as we love our patients, and believe me, I love my patients so much, this is not sustainable. I've been asked, well, why don't you just refuse their contracts or do a better job of negotiating? Because when 3 PBMs control such a large share of the market, there's really no negotiating with them. These contracts that are presented to us are take it or leave it. And for a pharmacist, refusing to fill these prescriptions isn't just a business decision. It means that we decide which members in our community get care and which ones don't. Another common question I'm asked about is the $10.50 dispensing fee. That was the amount determined by KDHE nearly a decade ago as the cost to safely dispense a prescription in Kansas. Importantly, that money is already in the system today. It's just hidden in the mix of complex PBM pricing systems. So the way it works today, the PBMs act as the middlemen, and so when a prescription's filled, they decide how much the pharmacy is paid and how much the employer is charged. PBMs also negotiate with drug manufacturers for discounts and rebates. So the drug manufacturer says, hey, if you'll put this medication on your formulary or your list of medications that you'll cover, we'll give you a discount. So all the money goes through the PBM. And here's where we run into problems. The PBMs don't pay their competitor pharmacies like me enough to fill the prescriptions and essentially run us out of business. And then the PBMs bill the plans for a much higher dollar amount and keep the difference. This is called spread pricing. And these manufacturer rebates are then bundled in with all the costs, making it very difficult for plans to know what discounts they receive and what they're truly paying for these prescriptions. So transparency, like what's proposed in Senate Bill 360, it doesn't increase costs. It reveals where the money's going, and it puts oversight in place to make sure that it's going to the right places. Why does keeping local pharmacies open matter? We support nursing homes, behavioral health facilities, hospice, often filling prescriptions in the middle of the night so a patient can find comfort right away, not waiting days or weeks for their prescriptions to arrive. Beyond healthcare, local pharmacies are part of the local economy. We employ Kansans, pay Kansas taxes, and we support other local businesses and schools. What we see today are clear trends. First, employer and patient costs keep rising. Pharmacy reimbursements keep declining. Meanwhile, PBMs continue to grow more and more profitable, with all three of the largest PBMs now ranked in the Fortune 15. Other states have shown that transparent cost-plus pricing can generate real savings. Senate Bill 360 helps restore transparency, protects patients and employers, and helps ensure Kansans continue receiving care from their local pharmacies. I respectfully ask for your support and a yes vote for Senate Bill 360. Thank you for your time and your service to our state.
All right, it wasn't quite 5 minutes, but it was pretty darn close.
Thank you, Chair Sutton. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next proponent we have is virtual, Jolene Fix from West Virginia. Are you with us? Jolene Fix.
Thank you very much. I assume everyone can hear me.
I can now.
Okay, great. Honored committee members, thank you for the opportunity to address the very important matter of pharmacy benefit managers. My name is Joylyn Fix, and I'm the Life and Health Director of the West Virginia Offices of the Insurance Commission, as well as the chair of the Prescription Drug Working Group and the Pharmacy Benefit Managers Working Group at the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, or the NAIC. West Virginia has been regulating pharmacy benefit managers since 2017. Our legislature passed 5 pieces of progressive legislation, starting with registration and taking us to the comprehensive legislation we have today. While there are many moving parts to the West Virginia legislation, the majority revolves around 3 prongs: pass-through rebating, a pricing reimbursement floor, and freedom of choice. The West Virginia rebating law requires 100% of all rebates, including but not limited to discounts, administration fees, credits, incentives, or penalties associated on behalf of a health plan client, to be passed back to the consumer at the point of sale through cost-sharing reductions. Cost-sharing reductions are defined in our bill as a deductible or co-insurance. Any rebate that cannot be passed through at the point of sale must be returned to the plan to be taken directly off of the rates. The West Virginia PBM statute also requires PBMs to reimburse West Virginia pharmacies at a rate of the national average drug acquisition cost plus a $10.49 dispensing fee. If the NADAC price is not available, we default to the average wholesale cost. Finally, a PBM must accept any pharmacy in their network, that is willing to abide by their contractual provisions. 6 years into our regulatory authority of PBMs, West Virginia balances the needs of our consumers with 61 licensed pharmacy benefit managers. PBMs are not used to being regulated. Every conversation started with animosity. We seemingly had to fight for every part of our statute. However, as we move forward, a few PBMs are starting to understand that regulation is not going away and learning to communicate more effectively with our department. The number one complaint we heard as each version of our bill was passed was that health insurance rates were going to increase. This has just not proven to be the case in West Virginia. Taking spread pricing out of the mix and coupling it with pass-through rebates have actually lowered the requested increases in each of the last 3 years. Our plans do still see some medical trend increases. However, what the plans would have requested has been lowered anywhere from 1% to upwards of 14%. I have sent in my written testimony a bulletin that we issued that has the data for the last 3 years of health insurance filings here in West Virginia. Our fight does continue. PBMs continue not to implement our law, and our market conduct process continually roots out the bad actors. Between examination process and complaints from pharmacies, we know that we still face an issue with payment methodology. We work with the PBMs every day to return money back to West Virginia pharmacies. Thus far, West Virginia has levied approximately $6 million in regulatory penalties, which resulted in over $20 million returned to the local pharmacy. Our issues in West Virginia are not isolated. As my work in the NAIC has proven, almost all states have some form of PBM regulation or adding more responsibilities to what they have each year. The national PBMs struggle to understand the variations in states' laws, leading to contentious relationships and trying to circumvent those laws. State regulators banding together to join best practices and to streamline regulations is where we can fight for the best of all. Again, I thank you for the opportunity to share what's happening in West Virginia with your state, and I'm happy to answer any questions now or as you move forward in this process.
All right, thank you very much. All right, that brings us to the end of the proponent testimony, but Jolene, if you could stay on for just a minute. I'm sure we're going to have questions, but I have the first one. With regard to the West Virginia experience, I'm trying to get a picture of as to how that developed. Here in Kansas for Medicaid and for the state employee health plan, we have 100% pass through, and I can't guarantee that for all all across the state certainly, but in my experience with those two, we already have 100% pass through rebates. Did West Virginia have that prior to your legislation?
We did not. We did not have 100% pass-through rebates. Some of the rebates were shared at different levels depending on the program, but it was not 100% model.
Oh, okay. Okay, good to know. All right, committee. First off, Representative James had raised his hand a minute ago. Do you still have a question, Representative James?
I do, Chair. Thank
All
you.
right, very good.
This is for the Kansas Insurance Commission, for the attorney there. I have a question for you.
Let's see, Brunk. Maybe.
No, you're good. So the bill, I love the bill to a point, and a lot of people get all hung up on the 1050. And one of the proponents just said that was built in. So, but it's in our bill. It's going to be in our statute. It's going to be in our law. What requirements will the state of Kansas have to make if the PBMs do not conform to the law?
Sure. So basically, on the 4 pricing elements, whether that's the 1050, the NADAC, the spread pricing, all of those obviously combine to one another, just like in West Virginia, to reduce that cost. If those are not followed, then under this bill, the department would have the ability to examine the PBM, examine the records, and if they were not complying with the law, we could fine them.
And so that would tie up millions of dollars as well?
I'm sorry, would what?
Wouldn't that cost in legal fees quite a bit?
in terms for the Department of Insurance.
Yeah.
It wouldn't necessarily cost the Department of Insurance attorney's fees, but it could possibly cost the PBMs, especially if they're violating the law. And they have had to, in many states, had to spend a lot in attorney fees.
And what's your opinion, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me for another question. What's your opinion on why is the federal government trying to correct this as a whole at all? And then why isn't there class action lawsuits from the independent pharmacies? Do you know of anything like that going on?
Sure. There are some lawsuits pending on fair trade practice at the federal level. In terms, and so the answer to that is yes. In terms of and for instance, there was a class action, we were just talking about the rebates. While Kansas's contract on the health plan has passed through rebates, due to a class action lawsuit by the Kansas Attorney General on another matter regarding the same PBM that we have, the State Employee Health Plan, it was a law firm brought forward and said, look at this information. The Attorney General looked at it, determined that there was roughly $20 million that had not actually been passed through to the State Employee Health Plan over the term of the contract. That was negotiated by the Attorney General down to roughly 17, and then attorney's fees came off of that for the law firm that had found that in the unrelated lawsuit. And that resulted in about 14.5, a little over 14 million coming back to the state. And that was through the Healthcare Commission. Oklahoma had the same thing. It was about 32 million. So even when contracts have passed through rebates, that doesn't necessarily mean it's coming through. Then on the federal, to answer your federal question, yes, the federal government is trying in certain areas. So they've just recently in the CCA, and I think Eileen, and I forget the other person's name, but they did a wonderful presentation on what the federal law does. They have enacted, and I believe it goes into place in 2029, almost all of the things you see in this bill, but it only relates to Medicare D, Part D, because that's what the feds have control over. They have instituted that will take place in that same time, the ability to obtain records, and there is a piece on the rebate pass-through, I believe, as well on the federal level, but again, that doesn't take place till 2029.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, now I had a whole bunch of hands go up over on this side. I think the first one I saw was Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to ask the insurance commissioner a question. She seemed kind of disappointed when she didn't get called on. Ma'am, first, thank you for being here to testify. I think it was Senator Owens that talked about how Medicaid is already required to do this 1050 reimbursement to pharmacists. I understand kind of the logic, the philosophy of if we're dealing with state programs, state employee health plan or Medicaid that's funded by the taxpayer, we have a role in legislating that and making sure that we're being good stewards of the taxpayers' money. How do we get the authority to tell one industry you must pay another industry X dollars on every service that you provide? Or, I mean, you must throw the shades open, let everybody see your financial numbers. I guess this is a philosophical problem I'm having with the bill is how do we have the authority to tell one business how they have to deal with another business? Is there any other examples where we do that?
Well, these are contracts that the pharmacists are entering in with the PBMs. But as you heard today, when 80% of your business is with 3 of the PBMs, you're going to shut your doors if you don't sign the contract. And you know, some of these PBMs have gotten pretty sneaky. Most pharmacies, believe it or not, still have fax machines. We don't receive prescriptions through them anymore because we have electronic prescriptions, and it's much safer for all of you and for all of us, and it's great. But so you get faxes from, do you want to go to a trip to the Bahamas? I've now entered you in this. I've got, all the things that if you have a home fax, you get on. So the PBMs will send you a contract and tell you, or we'll send you an offer and say, here's the contract we're going to offer you, and unless you let us know within, I don't know, 5-7 days, we're opting you into the contract. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's a good business practice. I mean, we have 35 other states that have done this. 35 other states. And I'd like to address the 1050 for just a moment, if I could. The state, KDHE, does a very extensive survey. Unfortunately, or well, it's fortunately, but a pharmacy that I once worked at had to fill out was picked as a pharmacy to submit. You had to do all of your electric bills, your gas, your obviously your personnel, the gas for your delivery vehicles, the property tax for your delivery vehicles, the property tax for your store. Everything. Think of it, every check that goes out the door. Your refrigerator, et cetera. And then they take and they do their, it was Myers and Stoffers, based here in Topeka, that does this for all of, many other states. I won't say all, but many of the other states also. They started here in Topeka with us. But anyway, and they came up, and I think it's 12, what was it, 12? The new 1585. Or, I'm sorry, 1585. So technically, they're getting shortchanged from Medicaid because 1585 is what it costs them to fill a prescription. KDHE didn't bring that before you all this year in the proper process. So this is we're using 1050 that is a decade old. And I did want to say one other thing, Mr. Chairman, if I might, that am I pressing you too much?
Keep it short. Let's go ahead. We have quite a few questions lined up here.
I got it. I would just like to say that as far as the 100% pass-through rate for the Healthcare Commission, for the SEHP, prior to the contract that we currently have, we did not have 100% pass-through, and we thought we did. And upon questioning about, are you giving us the rebate on the specialty drugs? 80% of costs are in 20% of the prescriptions that are specialty drugs. And when I asked them directly, are we getting rebates on specialty drugs? The answer was no. And I said, why not? And they said, I don't know. A pharmacist said this to another pharmacist. I don't know. We just never asked them for it. So we were not, until this current contract, getting that 100% rebate, even though the plan was under the impression that they were. So.
Right. And if I could actually just follow up on that question a little bit, something you said kind of tripped my thought processes here. Are you saying that there are auto enrollments into a legally binding contract?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Am I not? Okay. Whew.
Auto enrollment.
I don't own a store.
If you don't sign, you're auto enrolled anyway.
That's right. It's an automatic
opt-in. I would have a tough time enforcing that one, I would think.
I'm sorry,
I
what?
would have a tough time enforcing that contract, I would think.
They don't seem to have any problem enforcing it. It's a take it or leave it. I know we've had complaints about that in the department, and we've tried to correspond back, like someone responded a day after the cutoff and said, we just saw this, we don't want in it, and they said, too bad, so sad.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
All right, I think Representative Chauncey, it wasn't your hand, was it Representative Brunk? No, okay, none of your hands were up. Okay, Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is actually for the Insurance Commissioner again.
I just can't remember your name.
So the way I understand, our state health insurance plan requires 100% of the rebates to be passed through. Is that correct?
Yes.
And something happened a year ago, maybe 2025, in which there was litigation with our Attorney General and a settlement. Can you tell us what that was regarding? It's regarding the PBM, but how much that was and any information you have about that in which the rebate wasn't passed through?
Isn't that what was just being, Stephen was just talking about?
Yeah,
That
it's
was
about
$14
$14 million, and they had created a subsidiary, Zinc, that sat on top of CVS, so the rebate went to Zinc and not passed on through CVS, intercepted it before it came to the 100% rebate.
So bringing this item up again after we just discussed it, the reason I'm bringing that up again is because do you think that if 360 is passed, that we would have the ability to see with the, how this money is being transferred or used? That Zinc is a group purchasing organization in another country, and we're just adding layer upon layer. So with this, the transparency would be there, and we would be able to see for all these different plans, not just our state plan. Is that correct?
We would legally be able to see it. Now, I believe that Joy Lynn in West Virginia has testified that sometimes they don't want to give that up, but you would have my word that we will pursue all avenues necessary to get the information that is allowed by us in Senate Bill 360.
All right, thank you.
All right, Representative Neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question is for Alex. While you're coming up, Alex, we're having this discussion about the $2.50. And we've heard a lot from people, don't put a pill tax on.
The generics.
I'm sorry?
The generics.
Yes. And so would you describe that $2.50? Because everyone on the other side is saying the patient will have to pay that and it'll get back to them. Can you help put that in perspective?
Yeah, definitely. I
Thank
thought
you.
if I kept my eyes down, didn't make eye contact with anyone, then maybe I would be able to skirt away from it. But anyway, yes. So what you're talking about, so part of the conversation that we've been hearing is that $10.50 is really going to hit the generics. However, what we're not talking about is that 80% of a health plan spend is on specialty drugs. And so our argument, and from our point of view, from the data that we've seen in other states, is that it's not going to matter that there's a $10.50 dispensing fee, because when you apply the ban on spread pricing, when you do 100% rebate pass-through, the savings that the health plan would see, it doesn't matter. Like, they're going to be absorbed in those savings. Does that make sense? Is that what you're trying to get at?
Okay. And I had another one, but my old mind just went dead. So I will pass my time, if there is time, to another question. Then I'll remember. Thank you.
Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I could have, I have two questions, Mr. Chair. One is for Jolene, Ms. Fix. Are you still on?
She's on WebEx. She's still there?
I am.
Oh, very good.
Thank you for your testimony. And you specifically talked about on your second page about, the concerns about increased insurance rates. And then you offer this OIC bulletin on the back, this multicolor 2023, 2024. I was just wondering if it's available, can you walk me through what I am seeing on this? I mean, because it looks like there's several company types. Are these exactly the companies? And if not, I can do this offline too.
No, absolutely, Delegate. These are live companies. This is the representative of every health insurance filing in the state of West Virginia. Obviously, we are a smaller state than you guys, and we don't get as many filings. But that is a representation of every person, every health company that filed.
Okay. And then
and the line of business that it's on, whether it was individual, small group, or large group.
Okay, thank you on that. I might have more questions, but I'll reach out maybe later on this just to look at that. And Mr. Chair, I have one question for the insurance commissioner, if I may.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes, sir.
I was fascinated by the beginning of your testimony when it came to the PBMs were actually a useful for when you started your career? Like it would cut down in seconds, you said, that what used to be the issue. And so then I'm left wondering, so was this not, where we're at today, not foreseen when PBMs rolled out? Or was it just like, it will never happen?
Well, they weren't called PBMs at the time, they were called switchers.
Switchers?
And they took your information and and you had to load all of your patient information with the insurance in. It went through them, they sent it to the insurance company, sent the response back. We knew how much we were gonna get paid, we knew how much the copayment was, and we didn't have to do 3 carbon copies of handwriting out all of our prescriptions for the day. So, I mean, it has evolved because I think somebody said, wow, this space in the middle, we could make some money on, you know, because we've got this and this here and, you know, and now it's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
And that was my follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Last question for the proponents I have. Last but not least, certainly, Representative Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, Alex from Iowa, or from the Hy-Vee people, I'll kind of get this real quick. So one of the things, so Iowa has already passed PBM reform. And so, I mean, Hy-Vee is a very big chain in Iowa. And so did that relate to you, or was it just to independent pharmacies and Hy-Vee didn't qualify? Can you, yeah, I mean, Hy-Vee was included in the plan, in the bill that was passed in Iowa.
Yep, the bill was passed in Iowa. Hy-Vee was included in the plan. In fact, we were very supportive of that bill. Right now, as I'm sure you are all aware, there are some provisions that are being challenged legally, but those provisions are not included in our bill here in Kansas.
Okay.
Sorry.
And if I could, one question I get to Vicki Schmidt, or the insurance commissioner. Well, one of the other questions from people knocking on my door has been about a problem with the privacy of information. That, I mean, as an insurance commissioner, you guys get information from all the different insurance companies, I would imagine, just auto, home, whatever. I mean, as a regulator, how do you handle it when it's kind of sensitive information that might, you know, that they don't necessarily want to be revealed? I mean, has that been a problem with other insurance regulatory industries, or is there some, how do you handle that?
That has not been a problem. I mean, we have internal things that we don't disclose those things. It's de-identified information that we would be getting on these reports. It wouldn't relate to the patient themselves. It would be, you know, it'd be like on the NDC, on the National Drug Code for that. And the Senate did add a privacy provision in there. We have no problem with the privacy provision that was added. In fact, we embrace that.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for your generous time.
All right, committee, that brings us to the end of the proponent testimony. There's a whole bunch of written testimony, and this goes for both proponent and I think, oh no, there's only a little bit in opponent. But there's a lot of written testimony as well, so make sure you review that when or after the hearing, preferably not during. All right, I have no one else listed as a proponent. Would anyone else like to speak as a proponent for SB 360? Seeing none, I'll close proponent testimony. The only neutral testimony is written only. Is there anyone who's strongly neutral on SB 360 and would like to testify to that effect? All right, seeing none, I will close neutral testimony and open opponent testimony. First up for the opponents, I have Sarah Fertig from Blue Cross Blue Shield. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Sarah Fertig, and I am with Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas. We are the state's largest not-for-profit health plan. We serve over 1 million members across 103 counties across the state. And my heart goes out to everyone in this room who is very confused by the technicalities of this bill. This is a very, very complicated topic. I'm going to try and break it down and be, you know, kind of boil it down to the most important issues here. So first of all, this bill will not affect our company. We don't stand to make money on it. We don't stand to lose money on it. The same goes for the PBM that we work for. They're called Prime Therapeutics. They don't stand to make money on the bill. They don't stand to lose money on the bill. So why am I here today as an opponent? We are here today because there are some important people who would be hurt by this bill, and those are the employers and the Kansans who fill prescriptions at pharmacies every day. We oppose this bill on behalf of our members because the bill protects big business at the expense of the little guy. Taxpayers, small businesses, families who struggle to afford health insurance and their own prescription drugs. And Mr. Chairman, at the start, I want to note there have been some comments by the proponents that the $10.50 dispensing fee is already in the system. It is not. That exists in Medicaid and Medicaid only. For the all the plans that would be subject to the bill, the $10.50 dispensing fee would be a new cost introduced to the system. And that rate would be tied to Medicaid. So every time Medicaid decides to increase the dispensing fee, commercial plans would have to follow. So just think about that. Anytime Medicaid would increase that fee, it would automatically trigger more costs to every insurance plan covered by this bill. So let me be clear, we do not oppose oversight. We do not oppose transparency. We don't oppose meaningful and strategic reforms to PBM, but what we do oppose is this bill because it is so focused on making pharmacies happy that we're losing sight of the most important constituency that we have, and that is Kansas patients. What we oppose is a policy that seeks to guarantee a profit for one sector of the healthcare ecosystem, but passes that cost onto the little guys who can least afford to pay it and who lack the lobbying power to push back on it. By opposing this bill, we're speaking out for those folks. We're standing up for the little guys. And Mr. Chairman, I would encourage the committee to refer to our written testimony. We have a chart on the front of our written testimony that shows who this bill applies to, because that's getting lost in this discussion. When Senate Bill 360 was first introduced, it would have applied to every commercial health plan in the state, except for federal plans like Medicare, TRICARE, Medicare Advantage. A number of business opponents testified against it in the Senate because it would cost them a lot of money. The Senate later decided to shield those businesses and their employees from the most expensive part of the bill. That's what the self-funded ERISA plans carve-out that Eileen described serves to do. There's no legal or policy reason that this was carved out. It was done to reduce opposition to the bill. So who's left holding the bag? Who's left in this bill to bear the costs? Small businesses. Every church that offers a health insurance plan to its employees. Taxpayer-funded health plans. Every government health plan in the state would be covered by this bill. Self-employed Kansans who buy policies on the exchange. Every public employee, police officers, firefighters, paramedics, public school teachers, they would all be bearing the cost of this bill. And thanks to the Senate's action, Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas is in a very awkward position. Our employee health plan has been carved out of the bill, but most of our members and employers have not been. How awkward is that? That's not fair. We're big business. We should not be given special treatment while the little guys are left holding the bag. We don't believe any Kansan should have to pay a tax on their medications. So, Mr. Chairman, what we want the committee to understand is that there's no way that this bill can be implemented without passing costs on to Kansans. Not all Kansans, some Kansans, the ones who work for small businesses, the ones who work for a school district or a county or a city or a church. They're the ones who would be bearing the cost, not big businesses like us and our employees. Now, I know that some of you may have been told that the patients won't bear the cost of the bill, but that's simply incorrect. To be clear, it's not up to Blue Cross and Blue Shield whether our patients pay those costs. It's built into the plans that have been approved by the Department of Insurance. We cannot unilaterally change insurance contracts halfway through a plan year. We just can't. Our responsibility is to administer the plans that have been approved by the Department of Insurance.
All right, Sarah, we've reached the 5-minute timer on that, but thank you very much. And I have a feeling there might be a question or two here in a little bit.
Happy to. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, next up is Danny Weiss with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas City. Welcome to committee, Danny.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Danny Weiss. I'm a pharmacist. I'm a managed care pharmacist that practices the benefit administration for the people who get insurance through Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas City. Blue Cross Blue Shield has a unique dynamic in that we have territories. We practice 2 counties in the great state of Kansas. So we represent Wyandotte and Johnson County, whereas our colleague across the aisle represents all the other counties of Kansas. So just want to clarify that point. The issue with this legislation, and I will agree with a lot of what was said today. There's been issues in this country with PBMs. They have earned some reputational damage. Some of the reputational damage can be argued on both sides with the history and the complex history of pharmacy and the navigation there. But the point I'm trying to make here is that this bill will incur costs to our membership. There is no absorbing it into the system. The PBMs have been in preparation of the transparency bill that was just signed by President Trump a few weeks ago. They've been preparing for this day for a number of years. Our colleagues in West Virginia passed their bill before that migration occurred. PBMs are one of the few areas in this country that you will get bipartisan support in regulating and overseeing. And we feel that the CAA that President Trump signed accomplishes that. To the point of the bill in question, we would contest that if this must pass, and we must do this, and we must support the retail pharmacies of our state, that we consider making an amendment very similar to every other legislation that has passed. Allow this only in the independent pharmacies, the true vulnerable pharmacies in the prescription deserts of our state. I don't feel that our premium payers should subsidize Fortune 500 companies that operate pharmacies. They already have the purchase scale, they have the purchase ability to compete very aggressively into offering the same universal support to them as others will end up in a unique situation that may backfire on our independent pharmacies. We'll lower the burden or the barriers to access to the markets and could find that big box stores are in the neighborhoods, driving out the small town business that has been there for decades. So from our perspective, we would ask that if this bill has to pass, we consider that amendment. To Sarah's point earlier, the ERISA component that was factored in is problematic in that it will make administering and overseeing this bill nearly impossible because pharmacies and individuals don't know who is ERISA and who isn't. How is a retail pharmacy supposed to know when they're due the $10.50 or when they're not? Because our cards look the same. And it's going to be an undue burden on the system and an administrative cost. So I would ask that we consider, if we must pass this, that we consider those amendments to make it livable for the people of Kansas. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Danny. Next up, we have Jonathan Buxton from PCMA with William Wilk on deck. I don't think he's shown up yet. He's over in tax right now. And Andrew Weens in the hole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jonathan Buxton. I am with Pharmaceutical Care Management Association. We are the National Association of America's Pharmacy Benefit Managers, and we do rise in opposition to the bill today. I want to highlight a couple things about PBMs. For one, PBMs are the only entity in the supply chain putting downward pressure on prices. We force pharmaceutical manufacturers to negotiate better prices through rebates. We force pharmacies to negotiate better prices, seeing their competition. And in doing so, we save the average American $1,154 every year on the prescription cost. It's important to note that PBMs are not mandated. Plans hire PBMs because they see value. And that value comes from developing those plans that the plan sponsors and the employers and the small businesses can afford and administering those plans. The problems we have with Senate Bill 360 focus on several areas. First, the recodification of the audit language that's been in place since 2012. There's a lot of stuff that we could work on in that. We look forward to working with the insurance commissioner on finding ways to address that. But the specific restrictions on plan design are very problematic. We use many of these tools to provide options for those small businesses and individuals in the state so that they can buy a plan that they can afford. banning spread pricing, mandating pass-through rebates, mandating the $10.50 dispensing fee, all those things will directly increase the price of those prescription drugs. And as a result, when times are tough and affordability is a primary issue for most constituents, this is a bad time to be increasing cost. Our estimate of the $10.50 dispensing fee would be, it would increase pharmaceutical spend by over $78 million in the first year alone for those small businesses and individuals. The state plan, I think it was around $5 million increased costs there. So in addition to that, we know that there's a lot of concerns about auditing and transparency, and we would love to work with the proponents. We think there are some great compromises there. The Consolidated Appropriation Act does mandate pass-through rebates in the future. The market is moving in that direction. We think that the transparency set forth in the CAA is something that is vital for the plan sponsors and the employers so that they can know what they're purchasing. We would love the opportunity to continue to work with the proponents. We've put together some ideas to address their concerns, maintaining the spirit of the bill without drastically increasing costs for Kansans. Thank you, and we'll stand for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you, Jonathan. All right, next up, he came in just in time. Welcome to committee, William Wilk.
Perfect timing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. William Wilk, Senior Director of Government Affairs for the Kansas Chamber of Commerce. We appreciate the opportunity to provide opponent testimony to Senate Bill 360 today. As you all have heard, this bill provides regulation on pharmacy benefit managers and establishes procedures and requirements for the conduct of pharmacy audits. There are some provisions within this legislation that are positive, such as the transparency pieces. More often than not in healthcare, especially when it comes to prescriptions, individuals and employers are not aware of what the actual costs are and who is paying what associated fees with prescriptions. However, the one provision that we have issues with is within new Section 5, the $10.50 dispensing fee. This provision is government price-controlled intervention. If this bill becomes law, the $10.50 dispensing fee will be set into statute for consumers to pay every single time a drug prescription is filled. According to the Kansas Health Institute, 54.9% of Kansans receive their health insurance coverage from an employer. It was voiced by 49% of respondents in our blind survey of 300 business owners and executives in the state of Kansas that managing health costs was most important to profitability. This answer was at an all-time high since we have conducted this blind survey going back to 2004. And as you've heard from previous conferees, this dispensing fee falls on the back of small businesses. We would like to recommend to the committee the $10.50 dispensing fee provision be removed from the bill. This is a complex piece of legislation with some beneficial provisions. However, the Kansas Chamber cannot and will not support government price controls mandating one business to pay another business a set fee in statute. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm happy to answer questions at the appropriate time.
Excellent. Thank you, William. All right, next up, we have Andrew Weens. Welcome to committee, Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thought we agreed you were going to play Enter Sandman for the closer, but not because I'm putting you to sleep, I hope.
The walk-up music wasn't available,
Okay,
I'm sorry.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity to testify today. My name is Andrew Weens, and I'm Executive Director of Kansas Employers for Affordable Health Care. KIA represents employers across Kansas who are struggling with rapidly rising health care costs, and we respectfully oppose Senate Bill 360 because it will increase prescription drug costs for employers, employees, and taxpayers. The central issue in this bill, as you've heard about, it is a complex piece of legislation, but the central issue is the mandatory dispensing fee tied to NADAC plus 1050. In practical terms, that is legislatively mandated price floor on prescription drugs. SB 360 overwhelmingly benefits one segment of the healthcare system, pharmacies, and nothing against pharmacists. They seem like wonderful people, truly good members of your communities. But this legislation guarantees pharmacies minimum reimbursement regardless of market forces or negotiated contracts, and we don't think that's good policy. As you heard earlier, this will affect generic drugs that maybe cost a couple bucks or $5 today could jump to $12.50 or $15.50 overnight. And the folks that pay for generic drugs are often Kansans who can least afford that kind of a price increase. Those higher costs don't ultimately get paid by PBMs. They come from employers sponsoring health plans and employees paying premiums and copays. That means your constituents. So every dollar required by this mandate and paid by employers is a dollar that can't go to wages, benefits, or hiring. And every dollar paid by employees is a dollar that can't fill up the family minivan with gas or put eggs and milk on the table or buy school supplies for kids. Other SB 360 provisions take away tools that employers currently use to control prescription drug spending. By forcing a one-size-fits-all structure, the bill undermines competition, innovation, and benefit design and adds regulations. As you heard from some of the proponents, you are already available. It's already available in the market. If you want to go use a PBM that doesn't use spread pricing, there are options available to folks. And again, mentioned by another proponent or opponent, this bill applies to teachers and public school employees, local government workers, and state employees will be forced to pay more for their prescription drugs. If you review the fiscal note, you'll note that the estimate is that more than $5 million annually in additional costs will be borne by folks for the state employee health plan. That ultimately means that taxpayers will pay more. And because of amendments in the Senate, many large ERISA self-funded employers are exempt from the dispensing fee, as Sarah talked about earlier. So the pill tax will fall disproportionately on small to mid-sized businesses, church plans, farmer co-ops, self-employed individuals, public sector plans, and folks who buy their plans on the individual market. It's been talked about that the bill also includes ERISA-regulated health plans in several of its provisions, not including the dispensing fee section now, which could raise some legal concerns. And PBM transparency and rebate pass-through provisions are now federal law. The bill will not stop the real pressures facing community pharmacies like mail-order competition, online retail trends, or demographic shifts. And if community pharmacies end up charging the dispensing fee and chains do not, some patients might take their business to the chains or to Amazon or to out-of-state mail-order outfits. What it will do is raise prescription drug prices across the board for those who have to pay it. Employers want to offer quality, affordable health care to their employees, and policies that mandate higher prices move us in the opposite direction. Today it's NADAC plus 1050. What will it be tomorrow? If we establish the precedent that the government sets dispensing fees, what prevents us from setting provider fees in other areas or reimbursement rates in other industries? What about minimum prices to help rural grocery stores? How about price caps at gas stations? Once we accept the idea that the government knows the price the best or they know the correct price, we're on a slippery slope. So I think if you do decide that it's good policy to set minimum prices in statute, you should at least be cognizant of the fact that someone has to pay for them, and that will be your constituents. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to stand for questions. Appreciate the time today.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Now, again, we also have written testimony as an opponent. There's some interesting information from Kansas Legislative Research as well, so be sure to read your I know it's a big stack, but look through this. There's some really interesting stuff here. All right, questions for the opponents. First up, I have Representative James.
Sarah, could you come up? I'm going to give you my scenario, and you tell me, I obviously have a hang up on the 1050 being in statute and being law. I do. I know we've talked too. So explain this to me. So recently, Express Scripts had a prescription that they couldn't fill for like a month. So I went to my own pharmacy. Express Scripts charges $8. They charged me $32. Now, are you saying that with this new 1050, if it was implemented, I'd be paying an additional $10.50 for sure?
Mr. Chairman, Sarah Fertig, Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas. So Representative James, it depends on what a person's health plan says. And not to plug our own written testimony again, but we do have a link in there to our testimony from the Senate, which has kind of a chart of how this might play out. But if you have a copay limit on your prescription drug benefit, you are responsible for paying that dispensing fee up until you hit your limit. So for instance, under my health plan, I have a $15 copay limit for generic drugs. So if the cost of my generic drug is $100, I'm not going to pay that dispensing fee out of pocket because that's already above the limit of what I pay at the counter. But if my generic drug costs $2, that dispensing fee is going to get tacked on and I will have to bear the entire cost of it. So it kind of depends on what plan you are. Anyone on a high deductible health plan, they're responsible for 100% of those dispensing fee costs until they hit their deductible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
All right, Representative Williams, I think, was next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this is for Sarah as well. Sarah, thank you for your testimony, and you shared in your testimony that is it fair for the state to force any employer or patient to pay more for health insurance, for prescription drugs and forcing those costs on the little guys. So my question to you is, does any of your PBMs, do they pay the same amount that they do for the pharmacies as they do the employer? Is it the same amount?
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that question. So we don't own, we are one of 19 owners of Prime Therapeutics. It's owned by 19 not-for-profit Blue plans, so we do not solely own our own PBM. But what you're talking about is spread pricing. And spread pricing can appear in two different ways in the health insurance and prescription drug space. I think what you're referring to, Representative Williams, is PBM spread pricing. And that is when a PBM charges the health plan a different amount than what they paid the pharmacy. We do not have that arrangement with our PBM. When they pay a pharmacy, they charge Blue Cross the exact same amount that they paid the pharmacy. Now, spread pricing can arise in other contexts, though, in health insurance, and this is why this bill is so confusing. It can also be an arrangement between the health insurer and a health plan. So we have some employer health plans who like using spread pricing, and that helps them manage the risk of a volatile drug pricing market. It's kind of like those, Evergy offers an even billing program where instead of having a $400 AC bill in the summer and a $20 AC bill in January, you can pay the same amount every year. That's kind of how it works when a health insurer negotiates a spread pricing arrangement with one of the health plans that they're servicing. It's a way for them to pay the cost to administer the plan and also manage the risk that they bear. So it depends on what you're talking about, but our PBM charges us the same amount that they pay a pharmacy.
Okay, so you are on the record that your PBMs do not charge more than the reimbursement rate to the pharmacies.
Mr. Chairman, our PBM, Prime Therapeutics, charges Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas the same amount for a drug that they pay a pharmacy.
Okay, and then my last question. My last question is, are you familiar with the Washington study? It came out a few years ago. And this study actually examined 9 million different prescription drug claims. And what it did was it actually said that in those 9 million claims, that 30% of those, I'll actually read it for you. The study found that employer cost rose by 30% in those 3 years, while the amount of reimbursement for pharmacies decreased by 3%. Can you explain that? Because you just said that there's no spread pricing. Maybe that's just Washington State or Ohio, but that's a huge difference. And that study basically also said there was a $120 gap between what the PBMs were receiving and what the pharmacies are flat, and then the cost to the employers. So if we're trying to drive prices down for the employers, which I think everybody in this room wants to do, it looks to me that the pharmacists aren't the cause of the problem.
Going to let her answer the question, or are we just gonna?
Yeah, so if you would be able to relay your thoughts on that study.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I'm not familiar with that Washington study at all, and I don't know what plans and what PBMs function in Washington, so I'm afraid I'm not a good source of information for that.
Great study.
All right, Representative Weichel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for Jonathan. Hi, thanks for being here today. The PBMs, when they decide how much they reimburse a pharmacy for a prescription that's filled, is that a uniform reimbursement? They give the same amount to every pharmacy, or is that different based on different pharmacies?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Wickley.
Weichel, it's okay. Happens all the time.
6 times, I'll get it right. That depends on what the employers and plan sponsors want to set up. A lot of PBMs will have plans that have across-the-board reimbursement rates for pharmacy networks. Some plans do offer preferred network reimbursement, and that's all in the build-out of the network, and that's chosen by the small businesses, the employers, and the plan sponsors.
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead.
Sorry, I can't see you. Is it fair to say that PBMs typically reimburse their own pharmacies or their preferred pharmacies higher than other pharmacies?
Mr. Chairman, I'll have to think about that. I don't know that assigning the value to it. We build out networks to make sure that the plan sponsors, the employers, and the people have access to pharmacies. In doing that and building out those preferred networks or regular networks, we do force pharmacies to compete on price. And so that's the whole value that we provide on that side of the ledger. So I can't say as far as like what every plan does, but there are differences in reimbursement specifically to address the building out of the network and forcing those pharmacies to compete.
May I, Mr. Chair? So in the states where there's transparency about those reimbursements, can you provide us some data about how they differ or are the same?
Mr. Chairman, the states that have transparency, there's multiple levels of transparency. The actual restriction on paying affiliates differently is not necessarily part of the transparency, but I can absolutely look at what we've got on some of the transparency reports and provide those to you.
All right. Representative Neighbor.
Thank you. Mine is just a short description for Representative Williams. This is just Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas. When you're relating to another state, unless that was Blue Cross Blue Shield, they wouldn't know what that particular situation is because they're an independent, standalone. They're not Blue Cross Blue Shield of America or USA.
All right.
So that's what I was going to explain because they're not going to be able to answer any of that question.
All right. Representative Proctor.
Could I have Jonathan Buxton come back up, sir? Thank you very much for your testimony. My understanding that you make money when pharmacists sell prescriptions and the insurance companies reimburse for those prescriptions. So do you have any interest in closing pharmacies?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, thank you for that question. Pharmacists are vital to what the services that PBMs provide. We need pharmacies of all sizes, all shapes, in all different parts of the nation. But we do force those to compete. If you're across the street from another pharmacy, we want to make sure that the plan and the people trying to fill those scripts have the access to the best price. We do not benefit from closing pharmacies. We need them, but we also need to make them compete when they can.
So in my town, we used to have a little corner grocery store called John's, and then here comes Price Chopper, here comes Walmart, here comes all these companies, and they outcompeted them. They could sell things cheaper, and they had a lot more selection. Got a Home Depot, and we've only got one corner hardware store, Gronus, that does an awesome job because they have all these weird things that Home Depot doesn't have. Should the government be in the business of picking which pharmacists get to stay open and which pharmacists don't get to stay open? Should we be in the business of saying, oh, Walgreens and CVS, you're big enough, you know, that we need to protect these other pharmacists that, you know, aren't as big as you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative, for that question. Lucky for me, I'm not the government. I don't have to make that choice, but I don't think it is appropriate for the government to put protecting one industry at the cost of the patients and the families of Kansas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for indulging me.
B. Dalton called about Amazon too, by the way. Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have two questions, one for Sarah, and then another one for Mr. Wilk. So, sorry. I'm going to ask permission. Let's see how the first one goes, and then
I'll nail it, Representative.
you will. It's a really so. You know, we've had a conversation before this, and the self-funded ERISA, is that right? ERISA exemption is extremely concerning. I was just curious, what percent of state and Kansas insurance is covered by a self-funded ERISA? Do you know what?
So, Mr. Chairman, that's a fabulous question, and I wish I had a comprehensive answer for the entire state. But self-funded ERISA plans typically are outside the regulation of the Department of Insurance. So we don't have great statewide data on that. I wish we did, But that's a significant, it's a smaller chunk of our business, the self-funded ERISA plans. Those are the companies and unions and professional associations that are so big that they can afford to set aside millions of dollars and bear the entire risk of the cost of those medical claims. They're not pushing off any of that risk onto us as Blue Cross and Blue Shield. All we're doing is processing claims. They're paying the cost. So I think we have somewhere around 100,000 members of those types of plans, give or take 50,000. Don't hold me to that. But we have many, many more who are in the self-funded non-ERISA plans and the fully insured plans that are still within the scope.
All right. Thank you for that. And Mr. Chair, if I could ask research to kind of do a little study on what percent. I got a report that says it's 66.3%, but I sure would like to have that validated of self-funded insurance plans in Kansas. And then,
I think that's a reasonable request. Yeah, absolutely.
and if I did all right, can I have another question?
What was your second? Go ahead.
Dang it. You're absolutely right.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And Mr. Wilk. That was a good one. Thank you, Mr. Wilk, for your testimony. I'm just curious, after reading all the opponents, I don't see the last topic, the self-funded ERISA, as an issue on the chambers here. Everybody else has talked about this, and so I was wondering, can you explain, if I took out the amendment and we gave you the 1050, but I put the self-funded back on, how would you still be opposed to this?
So we did, in the Senate committee, I did cite that we wanted self-funded ERISA plans completely exempt from the bill. Running through our membership, they were okay with being exempt from Section 5. Some of them were, but on that answer, I'd have to check with our membership.
Can I just ask, why did you want them off?
Because anytime you try to put state regulation on ERISA, I think it just raises red flags because it leads to litigation.
All right. Thank you, thank you, Mr. Chair, for your indulgence.
All right, and Representative Weichel for
Thank you,
second round.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your indulgence. My question is for Jonathan again. A follow-up on the question from Representative Proctor. He asked if you were interested in putting pharmacies out of business. And I appreciate your response that you very much want pharmacies to be in business. My question is, are you equally interested in all pharmacies staying in business, or do you own certain pharmacies, or do your members own certain pharmacies that you're more interested in keeping in business?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Weichel. Had to hear it 6 times. We need independent pharmacies, and we need chain pharmacies. We do not, if some of our members do own pharmacies. However, when it comes to fulfilling the needs of Kansans, we need pharmacies where Kansans are. And so we are agnostic as to which pharmacies stay open or close as long as the pharmacists or the patients have access to those pharmacies.
All right, very good. I think we've run through the questions. Representative Wagner, slow playing it after 5 o'clock. That's lovely.
Just real quick, if the gentleman from the PBM group would come back up. So if I could ask, I mean, I've certainly heard this plenty, that, you play coy about the different pharmacies, but is it not a fact that you do have where the PBM itself reimburses, I mean, they reimburse, that they have a different rate that they will pay this pharmacy versus that pharmacy. It's not a question of the pharmacy being efficient enough to operate under the price given, but it's a different price to pharmacy A versus pharmacy B. Does that not happen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative, for the question. How a pharmacy is reimbursed is determined by the plan and the network that pharmacy is in. That is dictated by the businesses and the individuals who purchase those insurance products. So that reimbursement is strictly dictated by the contract between the pharmacy and the PBM to be in the network.
So if I could it has nothing to do with the PBM itself. You're saying that the insurer somehow has an interest in having this type of pharmacy reimbursed at a higher rate than this type of pharmacy? I mean, if the cost is what you're charging the pharmacy, as it would be, should that not be equal across the board? I mean, I know that that is one of the major complaints we hear that you guys do, kind of in a, and I don't mean this personally, but in kind of a predatory fashion, that you're kind of, favoring this group and going after this group. And that's why the one group would apparently be growing and the other is shrinking. I mean, you're just saying you're innocent of it. It's the people who are buying the insurance are guilty of that. I mean, why would they even go that route? I mean,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll do my best to answer the question. As I stated, our job is to build the networks and to contract with pharmacies to create competitive networks that plan sponsors, businesses, and individuals can afford. The market will dictate how those networks, if there is cost savings from how those networks are built out, the PBM keeps the business with that small business or that family that bought the insurance. If it is getting more expensive, then they will shop around. And so the market is dictating, if that is happening on the regular, as we're accused of quite often, then the market will dictate that out. A new PBM will be brought on. There's competition here in Kansas from a local PBM that is arguing that they're not doing that type of thing. So that the market is currently regulating that. And so it's not the kind of business practice that would make a lot of sense moving forward to do it 100% across the board.
okay, I'll pass. I don't want to, we're after hours and all that stuff.
It's
So
5 o'clock somewhere.
all right. Thank you.
All right, I have no further questions. Committee, again, we do have a pile of written testimony as well as some interesting stuff from KLRD. I would encourage you strongly to review that. And if you have any questions, again, I can certainly serve as a clearinghouse to get that information, remove all the names of the guilty, and send it out and try to get answers to your questions. But I would encourage it over the next few days. With that, oh wait, I have no one else listed as opponents. I'll close opponent testimony unless someone wants to jump up right now. All right, I'll close opponent testimony, close the hearing on Senate Bill 360, and we are adjourned.